Junior Sensor Officer Trilvex trembles as the alert signal pulses across his neural interface. He's the first Zarelian in 3 centuries to detect an unknown species approaching Imperial space. His 6-fingered hands hover over the emergency protocols as the vessel, utilizing a propulsion system that somehow manipulates quantum foam, approaches Kalos 7 outpost. Classification impossible, he reports to High Commander Vexen, who materializes beside him with uncharacteristic haste. The commander's crystalline eyes narrow at the readout. Impossible means you're not trying hard enough. Vexen hisses, accessing the data stream directly. His confidence falters as the scans reveal a ship design utilizing scientific principles their engineers had theorized but never successfully implemented. The vessel's trajectory is erratic, its energy signature fluctuating. When Vexen initiates first contact protocols, broadcasting across all known frequencies, the response is silence. Their tactical AI flags multiple primitive but ingeniously interconnected weapon systems. Warning: hostile ship on the horizon. The ancient alert ripples through the Kalos 7 defense grid. Aboard the UES Dauntless, Captain Maya Hernandez's blood-soaked hands work frantically to stabilize her communications officer. The spatial anomaly they'd encountered had caused catastrophic systems failures and sent a piece of bulkhead straight through Lieutenant Rivera's abdomen. "Stay with me, Lieutenant," she orders, applying a nanogle pack as the ship's medical eye struggles to route emergency power to the medical bay. In engineering, survivors work with grim determination, manually venting radiation from damaged sectors while patching together their comms array. Through the viewports, the light of an unfamiliar star system offers their only hope for shelter and repairs. None of them realize their approach, silent and on an injury-induced wavering course, has just been interpreted as an act of war by the most powerful empire in the galactic sector. Commander Vexen paces the crystalline deck of his command center, the sharp angles of his exoskeleton catching the ambient light as he moves. "Magnify visual spectrum," he orders. The holographic display expands, revealing more details of the approaching vessel. Material composition analysis indicates primarily titanium-based alloys with carbon fiber reinforcement, reports Science Officer Zell Trin, her voice harmonizing with the ship's ambient tones. Primitive, yet the configuration is unlike anything in our database. "Cross-reference with all known extinct civilizations," Vexen demands. "Completed. No match found." The ship's energy signature fluctuates again, dropping almost to 0 before surging unexpectedly. The Zarelian tactical officers exchange concerned glances, their crystalline faces fracturing light in patterns that denote confusion. "It's toying with us," mutters Security Chief Krenvos. "Testing our defenses." Vexen isn't convinced. Something about the approach feels wrong, not calculated, but desperate. Still, centuries of protocol cannot be ignored. Deploy interdiction fields. Prepare warning salvo. Standard first contact defensive posture. On the Dauntless, Engineering Chief Kenji Seto crawls through a maintenance shaft, his environment suit's integrity warnings flashing across his visor. The radiation leakage from the damaged quantum drive is approaching lethal levels. "Rerouting emergency power to medical," he confirms through gritted teeth, manually connecting cables that the automated systems can no longer control. "Dr. Jensen, you've got about 3 minutes of full power before I have to redirect to life support." In the makeshift medical bay, Dr. Jensen doesn't waste breath acknowledging. Her hands move with practiced precision across Lieutenant Rivera's torn abdomen, nanoscale sutures knitting together damaged tissue faster than natural healing, but still too slowly. "Captain," she calls without looking up, "I need 10 minutes, not 3. Hernandez weighs impossible choices, life support for the entire surviving crew versus the life of her communications officer. Before she can respond, a shudder runs through the ship. Warning lights bathe the corridor in pulsing red. "Energy surge detected," reports the ship's damaged AI, its voice distorting. "Unidentified field encompassing the vessel. External communications, further degraded. Hernandez feels her stomach sink. They've encountered something, or someone, in this uncharted system. Without functioning communications, without sensors, with a critically wounded crew and failing systems, first contact is about to occur under the worst possible circumstances. All hands, she broadcasts through the internal comms, prepare for possible hostile engagement. This is not a drill. The Dauntless drifts deeper into Xyrelian space, trailing debris and radiation, appearing to the Xyrelian defensive grid exactly like a wounded predator approaching with murderous intent. Two civilizations, each misreading the other's intentions, edge closer to a conflict that neither truly wants. Calibrated warning response only. Commander Vexen orders, watching the targeting solutions crystallize in his mind's eye. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The Xyrelian vessels launch a perfectly synchronized pattern of low-yield energy pulses, what their military doctrine classifies as a civilized greeting to potential hostiles. On the Dauntless, alarms scream as the pulses tear through their already compromised hull. A secondary oxygen recycler explodes, sending 3 crew members flying across the bridge. Captain Hernandez wipes blood from her eyes as the tactical display flickers between static and disaster. So that's how it's going to be, she whispers, meeting her XO's gaze. Commander Jackson nods grimly. The Shepherd Protocol, Captain. Hernandez hesitates for only a heartbeat. The experimental neural link combat system had never been field-tested. During simulations, 2 pilots had suffered permanent psychological damage. Initiate Shepherd, she orders, as medical nanites flood her bloodstream, preparing her nervous system for the strain. Across the ship, 7 crew members receive the command and enter their acceleration pods. The ship goes dark momentarily as all power diverts to the neural interface. Then, something miraculous happens. The Dauntless moves. On the Xyrelian command ship, Tactical Officer Krenvoss stares in disbelief at her displays. Impossible, she breathes. They're executing a Carillion defensive spiral with inferior technology. The supposedly primitive vessel performs a maneuver that requires split-second timing across multiple systems. Instead of fleeing, it positions itself precisely where the next volley of Xyrelian weapons will be least effective, while simultaneously presenting its most armored sections. Full engagement, Commander Vexen orders, his voice tight with sudden concern. All vessels, combat formation Theta 9. What none of the Xyrelians understand. Through the Shepherd Protocol, Captain Hernandez isn't just commanding her ship. She and her neural-linked crew have become the ship, their collective human intuition making decisions faster than any AI. The acceleration pods seal around Lieutenant Commander Jackson, the gel-like substance filling his lungs burning as it oxygenates his blood directly. His consciousness stretches, merging with Captain Hernandez and the 5 other senior officers engaging in the neural link. The sensation is both terrifying and exhilarating. 7 minds becoming one, yet each retaining their specialties. Tactical assessment, Hernandez thinks, and Jackson's expertise floods their shared consciousness. He perceives spatial relationships that would be incomprehensible on standard displays, sensing weak points in the Xyrelian formation. They're arranged in a classic pincer configuration, he realizes. Predictable, mathematically optimal, but slow to adapt. Through the shared neural space, Navigation Officer Chen suggests an impossible maneuver, one that would require firing the maneuvering thrusters in a sequence no human pilot could coordinate. But in Shepherd, they aren't 7 humans anymore. They're a single entity with distributed processing capabilities exceeding any conventional AI. The Dauntless rolls sideways, every thruster firing in perfect sequence, sliding between 2 Xyrelian cruisers that had been closing for a kill shot. Both enemy vessels adjust with textbook precision, but the human ship has already calculated their response. It fires targeted EMP bursts that momentarily disrupt the nearest cruiser's sensors. In the crystalline command center of his flagship, Commander Vexen watches with growing concern. The tactical AI keeps adjusting its predictions, each one failing as the human vessel moves in ways that defy its models. Their maneuvers appear random, his tactical officer reports, but analysis indicates purpose in the chaos. Nothing is truly random, Vexon responds, his crystalline structure vibrating with intensity. Find the pattern. There is no discernible pattern, Commander. It's as if each decision is being made anew, without reference to established doctrine. This concept troubles Vexon more than he cares to admit. The Xyrelian military excellence is built on identifying patterns, analyzing responses, and implementing optimal solutions. Their entire strategic philosophy assumes that all rational opponents will follow logical progressions of tactical choices. These humans aren't following any recognizable logic. In the Shepherd interface, the neural-linked crew experiences time differently. What seems like minutes to them transpires in seconds of real time. Captain Hernandez perceives not just her ship, but the space around it as an extension of her body. She feels rather than sees the Xyrelian weapons charging, the subtle shifts in their shield harmonics. They're adapting their targeting frequencies, warns Weapons Officer Reyes, his consciousness rippling through the shared mental space. But they're doing it systematically, cycling through predictable sequences. Hernandez makes an intuitive leap that would be impossible without the neural link. If they're cycling systematically, we can predict the sequence and adjust our shields to match each targeting frequency just before they fire. The Dauntless's shields shimmer, cycling frequencies at speeds the Xyrelian tactical computers fail to anticipate. Their next volley, which should have penetrated the human vessel's defenses, dissipates harmlessly against precisely calibrated shields. Impossible, hisses Commander Vexon, his crystalline form fracturing light in patterns indicating extreme agitation. They've countered a targeting algorithm developed over 7 centuries of warfare. What he cannot comprehend, the humans aren't countering with another algorithm. They're improvising, adapting, their neural-linked minds processing information with both the speed of computers and the intuitive leaps no machine intelligence could match. All vessels, Vexon commands, his voice hardening, disengage predictive targeting. Switch to manual fire control. Even as he gives the order, he knows it won't be enough. Something fundamental has changed in the battlefield, a paradigm shift he cannot yet grasp, but instinctively fears. The Dauntless dances. There is no other word for how the vessel moves through space, using the nearby asteroid field not as an obstacle, but as a partner in its deadly ballet. Captain Hernandez, her consciousness stretched across the ship's systems, feels rather than sees the patterns in the Xyrelian attack formations. They're thinking in algorithms. She realizes, the thought echoing to her neural-linked crew. 3-dimensional chess played by mathematicians. A Xyrelian cruiser corners the Dauntless against a massive asteroid. Instead of evading, Hernandez orders something that makes her weapons officer, Lieutenant Chen, mentally recoil. Trust me, her consciousness whispers to his. The Dauntless fires its forward thrusters at full capacity, directly toward the asteroid's surface. At the last possible microsecond, they fire precision charges that fracture the asteroid's outer layer, creating a debris field that shreds the pursuing Xyrelian vessel's sensor array. In the confusion, the Dauntless executes a maneuver that would kill an unaugmented human crew from forces alone. 3 hours into the battle, the impossible has happened. 5 Xyrelian vessels list with critical damage. 2 have withdrawn entirely. The remaining ships have abandoned their elegant formations, their responses increasingly desperate. In the Xyrelian command center, silence reigns as tactical projections are generated and discarded at blinding speed. Their combat as, programmed with millennia of warfare data, continuously update victory probabilities that spiral downward with each passing minute. Our simulations predicted their defeat in 28 minutes, Tactical Officer Krenvoss whispers. They have lost 40% functionality, yet they fight as if uninjured. Commander Vexon, his crystalline eyes reflecting the holographic battlefield, feels something alien to his species' psychology: doubt. What manner of beings continue fighting when defeat is mathematically certain? He asks no one in particular. The human vessel answers his question by executing yet another impossible maneuver, this one using the gravitic distortion from the Xyrelian flagship's own engines to slingshot a precision strike against their weakest shield harmonic, a vulnerability they had not realized existed until the humans somehow identified. Within the Shepard neural network, warning signals flare as the connections between the linked crew members begin to degrade. The human brain isn't designed to maintain this level of expanded consciousness for extended periods. Neural pathway deterioration accelerating. Dr. Jensen reports, her consciousness flickering with pain that all of them experience simultaneously. Estimated Shepard integrity, 73% and dropping. Captain Hernandez perceives their options as glowing pathways through spacetime, probability vectors shifting with each passing moment. The Xyrelians have superior numbers, technology, and resources. By all logical metrics, the Dauntless should surrender, or at least retreat. Logic, however, has never been humanity's only guide. Commander Chen analyzed their flagship's engine signature. She directs through the neural link. Their science officer's consciousness expands into the task, perceiving electromagnetic patterns invisible to normal sensors. Their propulsion system uses controlled quantum fluctuations. He reports with excitement rippling through the shared mindspace. There's a harmonic resonance pattern in their power distribution. Jackson's tactical expertise integrates this information instantly. If we modulate our remaining torpedoes to match that harmonic frequency, we could trigger a cascade disruption in their power systems. Hernandez completes. In the neural link, thoughts flow between minds without the barriers of verbal communication. Outside the Shepard interface, the physical bodies of the linked crew show signs of extreme stress. Nosebleeds, elevated heart rates, synaptic overload warnings flash across medical monitors that no one is watching. Commander Vexen observes the human vessel's erratic movements with growing unease. His tactical display indicates the ship has suffered critical damage to multiple systems. By all rights, it should be disabled or retreating. Dispatch cruisers Vexen and Xyrel 9 to execute pincer maneuver Delta, he orders, his voice betraying his frustration. All remaining vessels concentrate fire on Sector 47. The cruisers move into position with practiced precision. The Dauntless appears to list helplessly, venting atmosphere from its starboard sections. A fatally wounded prey animal. It's a trap. As the Xyrelian vessels close in, the Dauntless suddenly rotates on an impossible axis, bringing previously hidden weapons ports to bear. The torpedoes it launches appear conventional on Xyrelian scanners, until they pass through the flagship's outer shields as if they weren't there. Harmonic frequency match, exclaims the Xyrelian engineering officer, his crystalline form pulsing with alarm patterns. They've synchronized with our shield modulation. The torpedoes detonate not against the hull, but within the shield envelope itself, creating feedback loops that cascade through the flagship's power systems. Primary systems fail across the vessel as safety protocols engage emergency shutdowns. On the auxiliary bridge of his temporarily crippled flagship, Commander Vexen watches tactical displays flicker back to life. What he sees defies comprehension. The human vessel, despite its seemingly fatal damage, has maneuvered to protect one of its damaged sections from further attack. More inexplicably, its weapons remain trained on the Xyrelian vessels but aren't firing, despite having a clear tactical advantage. There, waiting, he realizes with shock. No species in recorded Xyrelian history has ever voluntarily surrendered tactical advantage once gained. Recalibrate all models, Vexen orders, his voice subdued. These humans operate outside known parameters. As his tactical officers comply, Vexen confronts an uncomfortable truth. In all his centuries of warfare, he has never encountered an opponent he could not predict. These humans, with their primitive technology and incomprehensible tactics, have achieved what dozens of technologically superior species never could. They have introduced uncertainty into the equation. We're losing the neural link. Lieutenant Commander Jackson's voice cuts through the Shepard interface as Captain Hernandez feels her consciousness begin to separate from the ship. Critical damage to the interface nodes has destabilized the system. Deep in the Dauntless's engineering section, Chief Engineer Kenji Seto works in darkness, emergency lighting casting his sweat-drenched face in blood-red hues. 3 crew members lie unconscious around him, their bodies forming a protective circle around his workspace. They'd used themselves as human shields during the last impact. Not happening. Seto mutters, connecting cables never meant to interface. Not today. With nuclear-hardened fingers, the only parts of his body not trembling from radiation exposure, he bypasses safety protocols that would make Earth's engineering corps collectively faint. The quantum drive, damaged but still functional, contains enough energy to power a small city. Seto creates an improvised channel directing that power directly into the shield generators. This will either save us all or vaporize the ship, he reports through gritted teeth. Miraculously, it works. The shields flare with renewed strength. The neural link flickers again, threatening to collapse entirely. Captain Hernandez feels the other consciousnesses starting to fade from her perception. Divert secondary memory processors to neural buffer, she commands. We need 5 more minutes. Captain, Dr. Jensen's voice comes through the fading connection. Neural buffers are at capacity. If we push harder, we risk permanent synaptic damage. Hernandez makes a command decision that would horrify Earth's medical ethics board. Override safety limits. Authorization Hernandez Alpha 7. The ship's computer hesitates, an almost human reluctance, before complying. Warning signals flare across neural monitoring stations as the Shepard system pushes the linked crew's brains beyond established safety parameters. Outside the neural interface, blood trickles from Dr. Jensen's ears as her physical body bears the strain of the expanded consciousness. In his acceleration pod, Navigation Officer Chen suffers a minor stroke, though the medical nanites rush to repair the damage even as it occurs. In the Xyrelian Command Center, Junior Communications Officer Trilvex makes a discovery that will change the course of the battle. Commander, he reports, his crystalline form vibrating with excitement, I've managed to partially decode their internal communications. Commander Vexon turns his attention to the young officer. Report. Sir, they believe we attacked them without provocation. Trilvex projects a translated audio fragment, the human captain's voice distorted but comprehensible. Unprovoked attack. Defensive measures only. Protect the wounded. The command center falls silent. For a species that prides itself on logical precision, mistaken identity is particularly disturbing. Further, Trilvex continues, I've isolated communication fragments indicating crew members volunteering for high radiation repair zones to save others. Multiple instances of officers refusing to abandon damaged sections containing wounded personnel. The tactical AI interrupts with its analysis. Such behavior reduces combat efficiency by approximately 27.6%. Prioritizing damaged individuals over tactical advantage is illogical. Commander Vexen dismisses the AI's assessment with a gesture. For the first time, he considers the possibility that these humans operate on principles entirely foreign to Xyrelian understanding. Access their medical communications, he orders. What they discover shocks the Xyrelian command staff even further. The medical channels reveal humans directing resources to the most severely injured rather than those most likely to survive. They hear a doctor refusing to leave wounded crew despite radiation warnings. Most disturbing, they intercept neural monitoring data showing 7 crew members willingly subjecting themselves to potentially permanent brain damage to maintain their combat effectiveness. They're killing themselves to continue fighting, whispers Science Officer Zeltrin, voluntarily degrading their own neural tissue to maintain tactical capability. This concept, self-sacrifice for collective survival, fundamentally challenges Xyrelian military philosophy. Their entire approach to warfare is built on optimal resource allocation and necessary strategic losses. Individual Xerelians are expected to sacrifice themselves when the tactical calculus demands it, but always in service of mathematical advantage. These humans aren't calculating advantage. They're simply refusing to abandon their own. Meanwhile, Dr. Eliza Chen in the Auxiliary Command Center makes a breakthrough that will change everything. Despite her radiation sickness, despite the tremor in her hands, she works furiously on 3 separate interfaces, teaching their damaged targeting systems to predict Xerelian evasion patterns. They're not random, she mutters to herself. They're evolving within constrained parameters. Her insight is revolutionary. The Xerelian ships maneuver according to complex algorithms, but those algorithms are anchored to specific trigger conditions. By analyzing hundreds of micro-maneuvers over the past hours, she's identified the mathematical seeds from which their seemingly chaotic responses grow. It's like weather prediction. She explains to the junior officer assisting her. Chaotic, but not random. If you know the starting conditions and constraints, you can predict where the storm will go. She uploads her findings to the weapon systems. The targeting accuracy immediately jumps by 42%, even with their damaged sensors. The next dauntless counterstrike hits with devastating precision, targeting exactly where the Xerelian vessels will be, not where they are. For Commander Vexen, watching another of his ships fall to seemingly impossible human innovation, certainty crumbles. His 3-century career has been built on a simple premise. Superior calculation yields superior results. Yet these humans, with their damaged ship and primitive technology, have countered his every move not through better calculation, but through something his tactical matrices cannot quantify. As his flagship's systems struggle to recover from the harmonic disruption, Vexen faces a paradigm-shifting question. What if calculation alone is not enough? 12 hours into the conflict, the battle zone resembles a graveyard of twisted metal and crystalline hull fragments. The once proud Xerelian fleet has been reduced to 3 operational vessels, their elegant designs now scared and corrupted. The Dauntless, by all engineering logic, should have disintegrated hours ago. Instead, it hangs in space, power fluctuating but weapons still tracking, held together by emergency field patches, makeshift repairs, and what Commander Vexen has come to recognize as something beyond mere technological capability, human will. Combat simulation complete, the Xerelian tactical AI announces. Projected outcome: mutual destruction with 98.7% certainty. Through the neural link, Captain Hernandez receives the ship's damage report. Life support is failing in multiple sections. Radiation levels in engineering approach lethal thresholds. The Shepherd system flickers, threatening to strand their consciousness in failing interfaces. At precisely the same moment, both commanders, human and Xerelian, reach the same conclusion. Initiate emergency communication protocols. Commander Vexen orders. All vessels stand down. Hold fire. Captain Hernandez commands through split lips, blood trickling down her chin as the neural interfaces disengage. The silence that falls across the battlefield carries more tension than the preceding hours of combat. When the communication channel finally opens between the 2 command centers, the visual feed reveals something neither side expected. Opponents who look exhausted, injured, and determined in surprisingly similar ways despite their biological differences. The Shepherd interface powers down, releasing the neural-linked crew from their shared consciousness. The separation is jarring, like losing limbs they never knew they had. Captain Hernandez gasps as her awareness shrinks back to the confines of her own body, the ship now an external entity rather than an extension of herself. Neural pathway damage assessment underway, reports the medical eye. Initial results indicate significant synaptic restructuring in all Shepherd participants. In simpler terms, their brains have been permanently altered by the extended neural link. Whether these changes will prove beneficial or detrimental remains unknown. Captain Hernandez rises unsteadily from her acceleration pod, refusing the offered support from her medical officer. The connection request from the Zarelian vessel demands her immediate attention, despite her condition. Captain Maya Hernandez of the United Earth ship Dauntless, she begins, her voice steady despite visible pain. We entered your space seeking emergency repairs after encountering a spatial anomaly. Our communications array was damaged. We had no hostile intent. On his command ship, Commander Vexon's crystalline structure shifts through complex patterns as the translation filters through. His tactical officer confirms what their deep scans now reveal. The human vessel's communication systems show exactly the damage pattern consistent with a non-combat accident. We have made a grave error, Commander Vexon responds, his formal admission sending ripples of shock through his command staff. In 10,000 years of recorded military history, no Zarelian commander had ever admitted error during active engagement. Your vessel's approach vector and non-response to our communications were interpreted as hostile intent. Vexon continues. Our initial engagement was intended as a warning only. Captain Hernandez's laugh holds no humor. Your warning killed 7 of my crew and critically wounded 15 more. The Zarelian commander's crystalline structure dims slightly, the equivalent of a human paling, and your response destroyed 4 of my vessels with all hands. There is no accusation in his tone, merely statement of fact. In the uncomfortable silence that follows, Lieutenant Commander Jackson steps forward, still trembling from neural interface withdrawal. Captain, our life support systems are failing. We have approximately 4 hours before radiation levels in engineering become unsurvivable. Commander Vexon, hearing this through the open channel, makes a decision that will alter the course of interstellar relations. Captain Hernandez, your vessel appears critically damaged. I offer emergency docking at Kalos 7 station for repairs and medical assistance for your wounded. The human officers exchange glances of disbelief. Engineering Chief Sato, his radiation burns visible even through the video feed, speaks what they're all thinking. It could be a trap. Hernandez measures the Zarelian commander through the visual feed. Despite their alien biology, she recognizes something in his bearing, professional respect. The same respect she'd feel for any opponent who'd fought with skill and honor, regardless of the conflict's origin. Commander Vexon, what assurance can you provide that this isn't simply a more efficient means of capturing or destroying what remains of my ship and crew? The Zarelian's response surprises everyone on the Dauntless Bridge. None whatsoever, Captain. You have demonstrated capabilities that defy our understanding. By all logical analysis, offering you repair facilities could ultimately threaten our security. He pauses, crystalline features refracting light in complex patterns. However, the initial hostile action was ours. Reparation is logically required. Captain Hernandez considers their options. The Dauntless won't survive much longer without extensive repairs. Half her crew requires medical attention beyond their ship's capabilities. And yet, trusting their recent opponents feels like an impossible leap. Why would you help us after we've destroyed 4 of your vessels? She challenges. Commander Vexon's response fundamentally shifts the trajectory of human-Zarelian relations. Because you could have destroyed all of them, Captain Hernandez, yet you repeatedly held fire when tactical advantage was yours. Your restraint defies our understanding of warfare, but it suggests possibilities we had not considered. I believe there is more to learn from you intact than destroyed. Captain Hernandez makes her decision, one that will echo across galaxies for centuries to come. We accept your offer, Commander. Transmitting approach vectors now. The Zarelian medical staff recoil when the Dauntless docks at Kalos 7 station. Not from the humans' alien appearance. Bipedal species are common enough, but from what their medical scanners reveal. The crew's bodies show evidence of extensive genetic adaptations, medical nanotech interventions, and radiation exposure far exceeding safety parameters. Most disturbing, their neural patterns reveal the Shepard interface has left permanent alterations in their brain structure. You did this, voluntarily. The Zarelian chief medical officer asks Captain Hernandez during her examination. The mission required it, she responds simply, as if permanent neurological modification were a reasonable career expectation. As repairs begin, information exchanges between the species reveal increasingly startling truths. The humans come from a single, isolated star system with just one naturally habitable planet. Their expansion into space has been recent, mere centuries compared to the Zarelians' 100 millennia of interstellar history. When the neural scans of the Shepherd participants are completed, the Zarelian medical team calls an emergency conference with Commander Vexen. The modifications to their neural architecture are unlike anything in our records, explains Chief Medical Officer Trellvax, her crystalline appendages manipulating holographic representations of human brain scans. Their neural interface technology should be primitive by our standards, yet it's achieved something our own scientists theorized but deemed too dangerous to implement. Explain, demands Vexen. They've created a fully integrated consciousness-sharing system, not just data transfer, but actual merging of experiential awareness. The 7 linked individuals functionally became a single distributed mind during combat, while maintaining individual specialization. The implications stagger even Vexen's disciplined mind. That would explain their unpredictable tactical responses. They weren't following algorithms. They were creating new approaches in real time using distributed cognition. More concerning, continues Trellvax, is that they did this knowing the technology wasn't fully tested. According to Captain Hernandez, 2 test subjects suffered permanent psychological damage during early trials. Yet these crew members volunteered despite known risks. In the station's primary engineering bay, Chief Engineer Sato, now recovering from radiation exposure under Zarelian medical care, watches with fascination as the station's technical team examines the Dauntless's systems. Your power regulation subsystems are peculiar, comments Senior Engineer Zexvax, his voice expressing what in a human would be profound confusion. You've cross-connected incompatible technologies across 17 different junctures. Sato shrugs. We work with what we have. That coupling was originally designed for deep-sea installations on Earth. I modified it to handle vacuum conditions. But it shouldn't function at all in this configuration, protests the Zarelian. Yet it does, responds Sato with a tired smile. Sometimes you have to ignore the theoretical limitations and see what actually works. This concept, prioritizing functional improvisation over theoretical optimization, fundamentally challenges Zarelian engineering philosophy. Their technological development has always followed careful methodical progression based on thoroughly tested principles. The examination of the Dauntless's computer systems reveals equally disturbing truths. The ship's AI is primitive by Zarelian standards, yet it interfaces with human decision-making in ways their own systems don't. Your artificial intelligence serves an advisory role rather than directive, observes Zarelian computer specialist Vrillnex. It seems subordinate to human judgment. Of course, responds Lieutenant Chen, still showing symptoms of neural interface withdrawal. The AI processes data faster than we can, but humans make the decisions. The machine serves us, not the other way around. This human-centric approach to technology directly contradicts Zarelian practice, where biological entities and artificial systems are assigned roles based solely on optimization metrics. If an AI performs better at a task, the biological operator is removed from the decision loop entirely. Commander Vexen, reviewing these findings in his private chamber, experiences what humans would recognize as an epiphany. The scattered observations crystallize into a coherent and deeply troubling whole. These humans, despite their technological limitations, approach problems fundamentally differently than any species the Zarelians have encountered. While Zarelian civilization follows optimal paths based on extensive modeling and gradual refinement, humans seem to leap forward through intuitive connections, improvisation, and risk-taking that borders on irrationality. Most disturbing of all, it works. Computer, Vexen commands, access deep archives. Search for any civilization that demonstrated similar characteristics to these humans. The system processes for several minutes, an eternity for Zarelian computing. One partial match found, it finally reports. The precursor civilization, pre-collapse era, relevant characteristics, technological implementation exceeding theoretical understanding, neural network innovations, emphasis on individual initiative over collective optimization. Vexen's crystalline structure vibrates with shock. The precursors, a semi-mythical species thought to have achieved interstellar travel before the Zarelians, only to mysteriously disappear millennia ago. Their artifacts, found scattered across 12 star systems, still defy complete understanding. Correlation strength, he asks warily. 87.3% probability of evolutionary convergence or direct genetic relationship. The commander stares at the comparative scans, human neural patterns alongside the few recovered precursor samples. The similarities are undeniable. What the Zarelians had been fighting wasn't just a lost exploration vessel. It was potentially the return of a species thought long extinct, or their direct descendants, with capabilities that had once dominated the galaxy. And Vexen had nearly destroyed them. The Zarelian High Council chamber hasn't witnessed such chaos in 10,000 years. The 15 archcommanders, their crystalline forms refracting light in patterns that reflect their emotional states, pulse with colors ranging from the deep blue of contemplation to the angry red of militant alarm. Containment is the only logical response. Archcommander Zarel Prime's form flashes crimson. These humans represent an unquantifiable variable. Their technological progression is chaotic, unpredictable. They must be isolated until properly studied. Isolation will only delay inevitable conflict. Commander Vexen counters, his newly promoted status evident in the simplicity of his crystalline structure compared to the elaborate formations of the council members. I have witnessed their capabilities firsthand. They don't think as we do. The chamber's holographic display activates, showing tactical recordings from the battle. The Dauntless executes maneuvers that still defy Zarelian analysis. Archcommander Lithvos, whose crystalline structure bears patterns indicating millennia of scientific achievement, raises a resonating appendage. The precursor correlation cannot be dismissed. If these humans indeed represent evolutionary or genetic descendants, their potential development trajectory could surpass our own within mere centuries. Precisely why containment is essential, argues Zarel Prime. Their resemblance to precursor neural patterns suggests they could follow the same path to self-destruction. The collapse may have been triggered by exactly these traits we observe in humans: their reckless innovation, disregard for established progression, neural technological integration. Commander Vexen activates his own data feed. Our long-range sensors have detected increased Mavorian activity along our rimward territories. Their hive mind has been systematically testing our defenses for centuries. Our standard tactical responses have become predictable to them. The mention of the Mavorian collective, a species of insectoid hive minds that had been slowly consuming neighboring systems for millennia, shifts the Council's colors toward uniform concern. How does this relate to the human question? Demands Archcommander Zarel Prime. Vexen's crystalline structure intensifies, indicating conviction. The Mavorians adapt through collective data sharing across billions of nodes. Their tactical evolution occurs incrementally but inexorably. Our responses, however optimal initially, become anticipated. These humans, with their capacity for unpredictable innovation, represent a tactical variable the Mavorian hive mind cannot easily model. In the diplomatic quarters assigned to the Dauntless crew, Captain Hernandez receives a troubling encrypted transmission from Earth Command. Their long-range probes have detected multiple unknown civilizations in this sector, some exhibiting highly aggressive expansion patterns. Most concerning, gravitational distortions suggesting a massive fleet movement toward human-explored space from an uncharted region directly rimward of their current position. The transmission ends with unambiguous orders: withdraw immediately. Report findings. Maintain communication silence. No diplomatic engagement authorized at this time. Captain Hernandez sits motionless, contemplating the implications. Earth Command, operating with limited information, fears provoking an interstellar incident. Their caution is understandable, but potentially catastrophic. The neural scans performed by Zarelian medical staff had revealed something profound about the Shepherd interface. It had permanently altered her brain architecture. Where there should be rigid divisions between certain neural clusters, new connections had formed. The separation between analytical and intuitive processes had blurred. What Earth Command couldn't understand was that she now perceived patterns they couldn't. A synthesis of data and intuition that transcended standard human cognition. Lieutenant Chen, she calls to her science officer, who shares similar neural modifications from the Shepherd experience. Analyze those long-range scans from Earth. Compare with Zarelian astrographic charts. Chen's hands move across the alien interface, his enhanced neural architecture adapting to the unfamiliar system with uncanny speed. Captain, the gravitational distortions match known Mavorian fleet movement patterns in the Zarelian database. They're preparing a major offensive. Hernandez makes a decision that will alter galactic politics forever. Against direct orders to withdraw and report, she requests a formal audience with the Zarelian High Council. The council chamber falls silent as the human captain steps onto the speaking dais, a privilege never before granted to a non-Zarelian. Honorable Council, she begins, the translation crystals converting her words to the harmonic frequencies Zarelians prefer. Humanity has encountered your civilization through unfortunate circumstance, but perhaps fortunate timing. She activates a holographic display showing detailed scans of Mavorian fleet movements, intelligence the Zarelians had missed. We've detected Mavorian activity that suggests imminent large-scale aggression. Our vessels use different scanning methodologies than yours. Where you look for energy signatures, we prioritize gravitational distortions. The combined data sets reveal what neither of us could see alone. The display shifts, overlaying human and Zarelian intelligence to reveal a chilling pattern. The Mavorians are positioning for a multi-pronged assault that would overwhelm standard Zarelian defenses. Humanity proposes a limited military cooperation agreement against mutual threats, coupled with technological and scientific exchange. Arch-Commander Zirul Prime's crystalline structure pulses with suspicion. Why would your species offer alliance rather than retreat to safety? Your single vessel barely survived our encounter. Captain Hernandez smiles, an expression the Zarelians still find difficult to interpret. The Dauntless is an exploration vessel, not a warship. We explore because we seek knowledge and connection, not conquest. She pauses, meeting each council member's gaze. And we've learned through our history that isolated species rarely survive. Cooperation isn't just morally preferable, it's evolutionarily advantageous. This concept, alliance as first choice rather than last resort, was entirely alien to the Zarelian understanding of interspecies relations. Their empire had been built on calculated subjugation or carefully measured cooperation from positions of overwhelming strength. You've seen how we fight when threatened, Hernandez continues. Imagine what we could accomplish as allies. Your precision and our innovation, your technology and our adaptability. A murmur ripples through the crystalline council members as they process this unprecedented proposal. The human suggestion represents something their strategic matrices cannot properly evaluate: genuine multilateral benefit without hierarchical domination. Vexon seizes the moment. Consider this. If humans share neural architecture with the precursors, they may help us understand precursor technology we've never fully unlocked. If the Mavorians breach our defenses, that knowledge could be lost forever. For the first time in recorded Zarelian history, the High Council finds itself genuinely divided on a matter of interspecies policy. The vote that follows will determine not just human-Zarelian relations, but potentially the fate of multiple civilizations across the galactic sector. The Mavorian Hive commander Vrak's collective watches, with compound-eyed satisfaction, as its battle group penetrates Zarelian defensive perimeters. The operation represents 5 centuries of careful study, identifying patterns in Zarelian tactical responses and exploiting their rigid adherence to established doctrine. Probability of victory: 97.32%. The hive mind calculates as 47 battle cruisers advance in perfect formation. Projected casualties: acceptable. The defense force that materializes to intercept them matches expected Zarelian parameters, 12 standard cruisers in textbook defensive formation. What the Mavorian battle computers fail to properly categorize are the 3 smaller vessels accompanying them. 2 bare markings identifying them as UES Churchill and UES Shackleton. The third, its hull scarred despite extensive repairs, is the now infamous Dauntless. The human vessels carry experimental upgrades that boggle even Zarelian engineering principles. Quantum communication arrays integrated with crystalline processing matrices, shield harmonics that adapt through both algorithmic and intuitive pathways, weapon systems that incorporate both species targeting philosophies. But the most significant innovation remains invisible to external scanners. The neural interfaces of the human commanders, permanently altered by the Shepard system, now communicate directly with Zarelian tactical networks. Captain Hernandez stands on the Dauntless bridge, the neural interface nodes visible beneath her skin pulsing with soft blue light. Unlike the desperate, improvised neural merging of their first battle, this integration is refined, controlled, and exponentially more powerful. Initiating joint tactical override, she announces to the combined fleet. Commander Vexen, commanding the Zarelian flagship, feels the strange sensation of human intuition bleeding into the crystalline precision of his tactical awareness. Where Zarelian strategies would follow optimal mathematical progression, human unpredictability now introduces chaotic variables that no algorithm could predict. The Mavorians detect the unusual formation shifts immediately. Anomalous tactical pattern detected, warns the hive submind responsible for predictive modeling. Variance exceeds calculated parameters. The Vrax Collective dismisses the warning. Their models had accounted for every known Zarelian response through millennia of observation. Minor variations cannot threaten a plan 5 centuries in development. Then the impossible happens. The joint fleet executes a maneuver that exists in neither human nor Zarelian tactical databases, because it was created in the moment, born from the unprecedented synthesis of 2 radically different cognitive approaches. Where human commanders might act too hastily, Zarelian precision tempers the response. Where Zarelian strategies might become too predictable, human intuition introduces critical variations. Most disturbing to the Mavorian hive mind, the defense force's tactics continuously evolve during battle, demonstrating adaptation rates that outpace even their distributed intelligence. The Dauntless appears to suffer catastrophic damage, venting atmosphere and drifting helplessly. 3 Mavorian cruisers move to eliminate it, exactly as Captain Hernandez had predicted they would. The trap springs with devastating precision. What appeared to be systems failure was an elaborate deception. The seemingly crippled vessel unleashes weapons fire that penetrates the Mavorian shields at precisely their resonant frequency, a vulnerability identified by combining Zarelian analytical precision with human intuitive leads. This is not possible. The Vrax Collective broadcasts across its neural network as a third of its fleet registers critical damage or destruction, recalculating victory probability. The revised calculations fracture the hive mind's confidence. For the first time in the collective's existence, it encounters a threat it cannot model. The remaining Mavorian vessels execute a full retreat, abandoning their carefully planned invasion. 6 months later, Captain Hernandez stands in the United Nations Assembly Hall on Earth. The neural implants that once seemed so alien are now visible on several high-ranking officers seated nearby. Volunteers for the 2nd-generation Shepard program. Behind her, a holographic display shows 24 alien ambassadors awaiting formal recognition. Humanity has reached a crossroads, she tells the assembled representatives. Our encounter with the Zarelian Empire nearly ended in mutual destruction. Instead, it has opened the door to a new understanding of our place in the cosmos. The display shifts to show the combined human-Zarelian fleet that repelled the Mavorian incursion. Our species complement each other in ways neither could have anticipated. Zarelian precision and technological sophistication, combined with human adaptability and intuitive problem-solving, have created something greater than either civilization alone. In the diplomatic gallery, Commander Vexen, now appointed as the first Zarelian ambassador to Earth, observes the proceedings with newfound appreciation for human customs. The data crystals he carries contain technological and cultural exchanges that will transform both civilizations. Most significant, preliminary research suggests the neural architecture modifications from the Shepard interface might hold the key to understanding precursor artifacts that have defied Zarelian analysis for millennia. If humans indeed share cognitive patterns with the vanished precursors, they may help unlock technological advancements beyond current imagining. Throughout the galaxy, intelligence reports spread across dozens of civilizations. The phrase that once heralded conflict, warning, hostile human ship on the horizon, now carries a different meaning. Not fear of an unknown aggressor, but recognition of a species that defies conventional parameters. In distant sectors, cautious commanders modify first contact protocols when human vessels are detected. Aggressive species recalculate expansion plans to avoid human-explored space. And when the Mavorian collective begins probing the borders of the Andorian Confederacy, the Andorians send a simple message that ends the incursion without a shot fired. Be advised, we have human allies. On the observation deck of the newly commissioned UES Dauntless Aya, Captain Hernandez stands beside Commander Vexen, both watching as Earth recedes behind them. The neural interface nodes beneath her skin pulse in harmony with the subtle crystalline fluctuations of the Zarelian ambassador's form, a symbolic representation of the unprecedented bridge between their species. Where exactly are we going, Captain? Vexen inquires, his translator perfectly rendering the complex crystalline harmonics of his natural speech. Hernandez smiles, gesturing toward the unexplored regions beyond charted space. That's the beauty of exploration, Commander. We don't need to know exactly where we're going to know it's worth the journey. The Zarelian contemplates this inherently human perspective, simultaneously illogical and profoundly insightful. As the ship accelerates toward unknown regions, Vexen realizes that perhaps this is the greatest lesson humanity offers the galaxy. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries lie beyond the parameters of prediction.